I found the root. I'll say that again.
Last time you wept.
I did cry when... Did I dance flower?
Yes.
I picked him a flower down.
It's the area of the first inhabitants of the castle which lived and worked. Let's take a look. Okay, go for it.
I might have dropped the paint on the floor and it might have gone on the carpet, but don't panic because I got it out, but it did go on my knitting and on my project bag.
He said to me, do I look daft? I said, no, you look cute.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Rob.
Wenlock Spring, it sounds very...
Or Wenlock.
Wenlock was a character in that Barbie film.
Yes.
Brian used to watch it.
How is it you can remember
Stitches
that?
in some portions look a little bit uneven.
Yeah.
You don't now. On the floor, of course, paint side down, but it didn't just land on the floor, it tumbled down my project bag over the yard.
And these, of course. This, of course. This, of course. This, of course.
Welcome, everybody. Is episode 127.
127.
My goodness, what a 2 weeks we've had. Because, let me tell you, we are on to our second coconut cake. But what's so exciting about this second coconut cake is it is a variation on the theme.
It is, because I didn't have any coconut cream in the house the other day. It was Sunday, actually, and I just really wanted some coconut cake. I didn't have any coconut cream in the house. And then I suddenly remembered that the Marks and Spencer's coconut cake that we buy, it's just a plain coconut cake and it has like a little bit of jam running through it. And then like jam brushed on the top and then just coconut sprinkled on top. So I thought, I can totally do that. I've got everything to do that. So I did. And it was a triumph, I have to say.
An absolute triumph. It reminds me of something that I used to get from school.
Yeah.
That I used to have with custard.
Yeah.
But yours is way nicer. Because I don't think they put the coconut in the
actual sponge. No.
We are, of course, referring to the wonderful pudding club that Kay did last episode. And you know what that means? That means this episode is time for a new adventure.
Oh, it's really good.
It genuinely is really good.
It's really good.
It's quite shocking. What a 2 weeks it's been. So much has happened, including we went on the biggest walk in the history of walks. And the beauty of this walk is we don't have to describe it to you because you can join us on this walk, because this is the walk that we did on the pilot Hidden Histories of Great Britain, which was actually called the Bakery Bears Picnic at the time.
It was, and it kind of then merged into the New Adventures, didn't it?
It was. It is. It was like the seed that grew into New Adventures. Yeah. But we did that walk again for the first time in 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
And you blitzed it.
Well, I don't know that I blitzed it. I think that's...
Last time you wept.
I did cry when... Some of it's a gentle uphill, isn't it?
But some of it isn't.
Some of it isn't a gentle uphill. It's really quite steep.
It's a calf burner.
Yeah, it really is. And I remember doing it last time and I got sort of halfway up the sort of steep bit and I was really, really struggling and I literally did start crying because I just thought, I can't do this.
You were doing a 6 mile walk off the back of not walking.
Yeah, that's true. And I totally wasn't exhausted at the end of this one. I was...
Kay, as I say to Kay all the time, when I walk, I'm telling you, the muscular movements and things, it's so different to the running. You were in a much better state than I was. Especially the day after.
Yeah, that's true. But you had run 3 miles that morning.
Yes.
You know, I hadn't done that. You'd already run 3 miles and then walked another 6 miles.
You're doing what you always do. You're shooting yourself down.
I know, but
Stop
it's true though, isn't it? But actually, I was really tired that night. I was super tired. But I was fine all through the rest of the day.
What we also did while we were there, which was great fun, was we're in the process of doing a quest for the perfect slice of cake. And we stopped in at Gervaux Tea Rooms.
After we'd done it, we did.
For a slice of cake. So you can watch that right now. I'll put a link in the show notes below. But yeah, it was brilliant.
It was an epic cake experience.
It really was.
Oh my goodness.
And it wasn't just because we just walked 6 miles.
No, it really wasn't. No, I mean...
Although I would recommend walking 6 miles and then eating cake.
Yeah.
It does enhance the enjoyment.
I really needed that piece of cake.
Not only did we do this amazing 6 mile walk, we also decided to paint are
Oh,
project
it is.
bags.
Oh no! I need to find it. It's in here.
So we did a little bit of decorating, and we also decided it was part of the plan anyway that, you know, with the movement of the show into here, we wanted to find the right colour for the walls to sort of bring it all together. So we ordered some colours, and I disappeared off out, and Kay was like, "Oh, I'll just, you know, I'll stick some of the tester pots on the wall, and we can check and we can see what we like." And I come back, and she said, "I've only just sat down."
Well, these are the tester pots.
And I'm like, okay, what happened? And she said, well, I might have dropped the paint on the floor and it might have gone on the carpet, but don't panic because I got it out, but it did go on my knitting and on my project bag.
Did. It was the lid. It was these little test pots. It's Farrow and Ball. I don't know whether anybody's ever used Farrow and Ball paint. It's a British brand. It's very, very expensive paint,
But there is a huge but here, and that but is the room which we did Farrow and Ball. We did ages ago, and it still doesn't need repainting.
No.
Whereas other rooms which we've done in cheaper paint has needed to be done once
or
if
even
not twice.
So I've got two colours, and I think the one we're going to go with is called Elephant's Breath.
Whatever that is.
It's like this colour on here looks very nondescript. It's actually not that colour at all. It's like it's on the wall over there. It's kind of like a mushroomy colour with a very light hint of like a pinkish.
Look,
but it doesn't look pink at all.
That's all lovely. You are trying to avoid showing the fact that you put paint on your project bag.
I took the lids off really carefully, right? Got a pair of scissors, took the lids off really, really carefully, and I was like taking it off like this, and I just got this little paintbrush to, you know, put a patch on the wall. And as I took this one off, the Elephant's Breath, being really, really careful, I just went like this. Oh God. And it landed on the floor, of course, paint side down, but it didn't just land on the floor, it tumbled down my project bag over the yarn that was sort of on my project bag and then onto the carpet. So it was all excellent. So it was this project bag look.
Chatsworth has been redecorated.
And I thought, well, I could wash it, I'm sure it would come off. It's only water-based paint. Sorted out the carpet, it was totally on my yarn and I couldn't get it off the yarn. It was only a bit like this, but it was all stiff, and so I had to cut it out of the yarn. But yeah, it's on the project bag. And I thought, do you know what, I'm just going to leave it because it's a little reminder, isn't it?
And I'd like to do
that slight tragedy that I had.
I'd like to do a little poll, and I'd like to know if you have ever spilt paint on any of your project bags or knitting. Because
it's bound to have happened, I reckon.
Well, I said to Kate, I bet you there's not many people who've done that before. Unless you are a painter and decorator.
Please tell me that there's loads of people that have done that before, and then
we would like to find out.
Quite such an idiot. So yeah, I think it's going to be Elephant's Breath in here.
I think it's time that we found out, Kate Jones, what's on your needles?
I'm working on a pair of socks for Bryony. Oh, these are cute.
And they look like what they are.
They do look exactly like what they're supposed to be. Yeah, and I've got them in my Harry Potter lovely little project bag. Oh, I love this bag. This was by QB's Not For Profit. I couldn't remember the name of the shop. Lovely, beautiful little bag. I started these socks ages ago and they've just got sort of shoved by the wayside. I don't know why really. I think I obviously had more interesting things to work on. But the other day I thought, oh, do you know what? I'm gonna pick up those socks and have a little knit, and I finished one.
I suspect a lot of it will have been the preparations for the launch of the Swish.
I'm sure it was actually, yeah, I'm sure it was. I think I was just distracted. Can you guess the theme of what this is? You've probably seen this colourway before, I would have thought, but this is from London House Yarns, and it's a Harry Potter themed yarn, and it's Hermione's jumper. Bryony reliably tells me, and she might be wrong because she often is, but you know what teenagers are like. She says this is from Half-Blood Prince, that Hermione wears this jumper. I think she said Half-Blood Prince, but that could be completely wrong because then someone else also told me that it was in Deathly Hallows. So it's a later film in any case that Hermione wears this jumper that looks like this. And I think they're brilliant. I think they're really fun socks. I was a bit worried because the stripes were quite thin. I think the grey stripe, the thickest point, is only 4 rows, and the coloured stripes are only 2 rows. And I was worried what would happen here on the gusset decreases. But I think it's okay. There's just a couple of the grey stripes here are only 3 rows, 3 rounds instead of 4. But I don't think it looks bad. I think it's fine. And I used a contrast blue. You could either get this set with a mini of the red or this sort of tealy blue. And I went with blue because blue is currently Bryony's favourite. It seems to have been her favourite for a while actually. So I imagine that's going to stay. So I've started, and it's sparkly. I don't know if that's coming across. It probably is not, but it is sparkly. And I cast on the second one straight away, but as you can see I've done a massive 2 rounds. Well done me. That's excellent. But do you know what, it's cast on, and that's the most challenging part, isn't it? I think when it's the second something. I always think it is anyway, like a sleeve or something. Once you've got it cast on.
Casting on anything for me seems to be challenging. Yeah,
it's that kind of mental block, isn't it? Thinking, oh, I've knit that once. I'm using 2.25, my lovely Chowgoo mini twists. It's the only ones really I use now for sock knitting at Magic Loop. And I think, to be honest, if these needles...
Did you say you were going to do some socks on DPNs again?
I did. I quite fancied having a go because I'm knitting Bryony's scarf, that Starry Night scarf, which is like the scarf of never-endingness. And I'm knitting that on DPNs and I'm quite enjoying it. So I thought, do you know what, I might try a sock on DPNs again. My worry is that because I haven't done it for such a long time that I might have issues with ladders. I need to practice a bit. I think I'm just out of practice. Because I never used to have ladders when I used DPNs before. So I think it's just a case
It's
of...
that second stitch as you...
It's the second... Yeah, I think... Yeah, look at you. Dan said to me the other day... He said, oh, do you know what? I think I might have to re-knit that clay quat. I know I'm saying that wrong. Sleeve again. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, finish both sleeves. I said, what are you on about? He said, oh, well, I've got ladders on one of them because you worked it on DPNs, didn't you? And I said, don't be crazy. I'll go and have a look. So I did. I had a look. And there is a few, there is a section where there's a bit of a ladder, but there's a bit of a ladder on both of them. I said, you know what? It'll be fine. It will to some degree even out when you block it. I don't think blocking gets rid of ladders completely, but it will help. And I said, it'll be totally fine. It's on the sleeve, which is a small circumference thing relatively, isn't it, in the round. And it might be that your ladder's like down here where nobody's going to see it, or under here.
I suppose it depends how much ease is on the sleeve as well. Because
there's quite a lot of ease on those sleeves.
Well, if
They're not
then
tight.
The ladders won't
show as much, no. And I think the fashion at the minute I've seen is for sleeves to be really fitted. If a jumper or a cardigan sleeve has got to stretch to fit on your arm, then to me that's too small. I mean, some people like that because I'm thinking, if it's winter, you might want to have a t-shirt on underneath it or a blouse or something. And there's just no room under there for anything. I like, as like here, I like it to just have a bit of room because then it's just more comfortable to me. But I know
definitely with a jumper.
Yeah, but I've seen loads of jumpers recently that people have knit where the sleeves to me look too tight.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that seems to be the sort of fashion, if you like. I don't know if fashion's the right word, trend maybe.
I remember being told when I was extremely young, and I think it's very good advice, do not follow fashions, wear what you feel comfortable in.
Yeah, exactly.
Because then you will look good.
I'm not... It feels like my arms are like sausages inside.
Yeah. Well, it would do, wouldn't it?
Skin when the sleeves are really tight. It's just not comfortable for me.
No.
But again, some people like it. Some people enjoy that. So that's
feeling like a sausage.
Feeling like your arms are like sausages. Yeah. So this is the cake of yarn. Loads left actually. I find that when I do heels and toes, I really only use maybe 55 grams of the main colour, something like that. Maybe even 50 grams for sort of Bryony or my size socks. I did wash this one because I like to show you in its sort of lovely blocked state. Because I'd knit this over such a long amount of time, when I looked at it, when I sort of finished it, I thought, oh, my stitches in some portions look a little bit uneven.
Yeah.
I don't now. Just because it was like, I'd put it down for 2 weeks and then picked it up again. And your gauge is never the same. I don't think your gauge is the same from one day to the next, let alone 2 weeks later. But now that it's all blocked, I think it's fine. It's lovely and even and not a problem. And that's my umbrella toe. I always use really these days.
What you see when Kay says things like that is you see the reason why I get so stressed when Kay picks up one of my projects and starts looking at it, because your eye is so attuned and it's brilliant.
Yeah, but
it is. You just know what you're talking about. You know what you're looking for, and you know what's good, and you know what isn't good.
Yeah, but
similarly, you were able to go look at what I thought looked dreadful. You went and looked at those sleeves.
Dreadful.
And so then it works both ways for me, because sometimes she'll see things and I'll be like, I didn't even know that was there. And then other times it'll be like, just relax, everything's fine.
Yeah, and because I think with experience you get to know what it's going to look like when it's had a nice soak and a relax and everything, and you know that will kind of sort out some issues, or whether it won't sort out those issues. I do a little technique now. This was my join for my cast on, and I do this little technique. I don't know if it's my invention, but I discovered it for myself, and it evens out that jog that you can get on the cast on. And I've done a tutorial for this, haven't I? And I just love it. It's just, you can't even see, can you, really? No. Whereas previously there was always like quite a significant jog. Yeah. Because you're knitting in a spiral, aren't you, when you're working the round? You're not working in a flat circle, it's in a spiral. So yeah, I'm enjoying those.
Well
done. They'll be done when they're done, really.
Yeah. You're going to ask me then?
Dan Jones?
Yes.
What's on your needles? This is excellent.
I'm in the process of trying to nail colour work, and one of the things that's been frustrating me is when you don't get an even fabric, when you get yarn dominance.
Yes.
That would be fair, wouldn't it, to say that it's yarn
colour dominance.
Colour dominance, yeah. And there's been loads of conversation around this, so it's been great to, talk to different people, hear different people's thoughts. I'm obviously filming this whole process in my Return to the Centre of the Yoke show, and I sort of came to the conclusion, just through talking to different people and reading lots of things, that where you position your yarn when it's floating is what is causing then certain stitches to pop out and certain stitches to sit back.
I think that's right.
So, taking that theory, if you then alternate every stitch that you make, I mean on the rows. So if on this row your yarn was at the bottom, on that row, on the next row, make sure your yarn is at the top. And so I developed this technique, and I've not seen it anywhere. This is all, I'm, in this world of knitting, I'm sure someone's probably done this before, but I've sort of, through trial and error now, come to the conclusion that the right thing to do was to try this and to see if it would work. And
we think it has.
Well, it has.
Yeah.
It has.
We think it has
done, because previously the problem that you were getting, where the colour work really does show up with regards to yarn dominance, is where you're doing a 1 by 1.
Yeah.
So if you've got something dominant, it's going to absolutely...
It really stands out, which you've shown you on his other ones of these hats. Yeah,
so there was a pulling in around this middle. Well, there is zero pulling in on this.
No, and just looking at it now in the camera, it's much less, in real life, when you look at it, the stitches do look the same size, and I don't think one colour is dominating over the other.
No.
And this hasn't been blocked yet either, because I said to you the other day, this is just going to be phenomenal when it's blocked and, all of those stitches have evened out and relaxed. But the back is just fascinating.
Yeah, the beauty of this, I need to try and do it without, but look at the
Yeah.
Look at the pattern.
It's really pretty. It's kind of like a shell. It looks like little shells. And if I just sort of even it out and hold it, can you see there how lovely that is? And wouldn't that be lovely on a hat? And I said to him, gosh, if you just did... I said, you should design a hat and just do it all one by one colour work, and it could be reversible, couldn't it? Because that on a hat, I think, is beautiful. And
So-
I've never, oopsie-daisy. Or I'll sort it out. It's fine. I've never seen
What I've done...
anything like that.
What I've done there is I have not only have I alternated on each row, I've also offset as well. So it's like you're alternating, but you're offsetting it by 1, 2. And that, I tried every different combination, and that was the combination which seemed to work the best. I need to practice it just a tiny bit more. But then when I do and I feel really confident with
I
it,
think it's great.
then I'll film a little bit of it and I'll show it on return to the centre of the yoke. Now, the whole purpose of me doing this, the whole purpose of me knitting so many of these hats, is to make sure that when I get up to this section on the clay quat cardigan, that we didn't get that colour dominance issue. I'm just about to cast on the body. And actually, the colour work down the bottom was quite tricky.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I just thought it was some more of that. Is it not?
No.
Oh, right.
No, there's more fancy things going on,
All right.
which is really quite exciting. And so I'm excited now because, I've maybe been not a bit unenthused, but just the knitting straight up the sleeves I found just a tiny bit boring.
But you've done them now.
Yeah. So now we get to the exciting bit, and I'm really looking forward to it actually, and I'm particularly excited about what's going to happen when we cut up the middle. But that is some months away because
Thank goodness.
I've got the whole of the body to knit. But this is, of course, it's the clay quat hat.
I heard somebody pronounce this the other day and it was totally different. It was something like clockquet or something.
Look.
Okay,
I'm
we won't try and do pronunciations.
Well, no, I mean, it's another thing. I think when you try and do pronunciations, you can end up sounding insulting.
I agree, yeah.
Because,
Which is not what we want.
No, we really don't want to do that.
So we just say things.
The best thing to do is to say it how it comes out.
How we would say it being English.
And that way, then we're not going to accidentally say it in a way which sounds just totally insulting. But
it's lovely, isn't it? I really like it.
The yarn is the Drops Charisma.
You went down 16 stitches on this one, didn't you?
And it's still big.
The size. But it's not. I mean, the size
is the other brilliant thing. It's the other brilliant thing,
Or blue, it would be good for me.
Really would.
Yeah.
It really would. The other brilliant thing about this whole process, I think sometimes we as knitters tend to knit something and then just move on to the next thing. And what that stops is the ability to learn, specifically when it's something that's got something in it that's challenging. If it's just some straight plain hat, then obviously you don't need to knit it more than once. But doing this a few times has just been so brilliant because it's enabled me to get so much better at doing colour work.
Well, you've got lots of patience because I wouldn't have had the patience to knit the same thing 3 times.
I think it's because
I don't have that attention span.
I'm always thinking about, how can I make
it better?
What can I do? And you do, because when it comes to the things which you love, like blankets and socks and all those things, you are always, like mitered square blankets, for
That's
example.
True, yeah.
You've spent hours. We're just running a series on that at the moment, and just looking at that and editing that up. The way that you approach it, it's scientific.
Right.
It really is, and that you're my idol.
Hardly.
No, it's true. It's that approach which I now am taking to the things which I like. Right. And the thing which I love the most about this pattern, because it's 1x1 colour work, it's so close to double knitting. It's not even funny. And whilst initially, the first time I knit one of these, I felt slightly bored by it because it was 1x1. The best projects are the ones which have got so much depth And this hat has got depth because you can go, right, okay, I'm going to take colour work and I'm going to really try and nail it now. And that's what I've done. And, you know, look, I'm really getting there, which is great. What
brilliant.
else is on your needles?
Okay, I've had to progress this into a bigger bag.
That's fun.
This is the biggest project bag that I own. It's quite a big bag, actually, look. And this is another one from my lovely Sasha.
And there's no paint on this one, too.
Oh, Sasha, no. Oh, that would have been awful if it had been one of Sasha's bags that I'd got paint on. I would have washed it if it had been one of Sasha's bags. But seeing it was just one that I made, I didn't bother. Oh, dear, that's just sent a shiver down my spine, Sasha. This is my Penguono, everyone. Look at it, look at it.
It's bananas.
This is just completely bonkers, and I've no idea how I'm going to show you this in any kind of sensible fashion.
My goodness, it's fun.
I have no idea where I'm up to, quite honestly, because it's just the most bizarre thing I've ever knit.
I can't wait to see you in it.
Well, right, okay, so where I was, look at that. I mean, honestly, look at this. Look, I mean, what is going on? What is going? Look at all those ends. I've got to say, I'm not adverse to ends. I've said this loads of times. I don't mind sewing in ends. Totally fine. I don't mind about finishing work. But this is, I've got to say, quite honestly, ridiculous. The number of ends and the number of bits of stitches I've got on hold, and oh gosh. But anyway, last time I was here, I was working this green panel, this sagey green panel, which is one of the side panels. This is the back coming out here. It's impossible to show this. But this is the back panel, if you remember, with the welts running down the side. And then you work on the side panels and what will come around the front as well, I'm presuming. I'm aware that I don't want to lose stitches on the other side. So I was on this sage green panel. You then cast on a bunch of stitches and work this panel, and then at the same time, well no, I think you just work that panel and then you start decreasing. And I'm presuming this is a front. Let's pretend that that's going to be a front. I've no idea if that's going to be a front. If it's going to be a front, who knows with Stephen West. But I think that's a front. So I did this panel here, which actually I used self-striping for, and I really like how that looks. I used leftovers of the Yarn Badger yarn. I think it was Fallen Leaves. I knit a pair of socks in it, and I thought, oh, let's see what self-striping looks like, and I think it's really nice. And then I thought, oh, let's go a bit brighter. So I used a sort of pretty, oh, I dyed that one, turquoisey, I can't say that word, a nice blue, and then a lilac.
That's genius. Turquoise, I can't say that. It's a nice blue.
When I say that word, say it again.
Turquoise.
It sounds weird when it comes out of my head.
Sounds weird.
It doesn't sound like that it's a word. And then I put in some lilac, and then I decided to go a bit neon with the very end bit. And this was some self-striping as well. This was Nicole C. Mendez, the disco. You knit some socks in it.
Love it.
And again, I've put some stitches on hold because
that's what you do.
That's the theme of the Penguono. Let's put some more stitches on hold. And I'm hoping that at some point I'll be picking up all these stitches and it's all going to make sense.
It's the funniest thing I've ever seen.
It's just, you know, it's
and the yarn choices are stupendous.
Well, I don't know that it is. It's not really looking how I had it looking in my head.
What did it look like in your head?
In my head, I wanted the colours to be a bit more gentle and a bit more pastel, if you like. Right. But obviously at points I've just gone a bit crazy and thought, oh, I'll stick some neon in and some bright blue. So now I'm just thinking, well, you know, it is what it is, isn't it?
This looks like something.
I mean, look at it. I'm presuming that this gap here, can you see this gap? Yeah. That this gap is something to do with the arms. And I think...
Is it?
I think so. I think, look.
That's a big arm.
I know, it's huge. But then it is very oversized.
Okay.
If this was imagine that this is on my back.
Right.
I know it's on my front, but imagine this is on my back.
Oh, okay,
and
yeah.
I think,
that makes sense.
Yeah, can you see what I mean?
So there's no welts on the front? No.
No,
just
these are the back. It's the back. So then I've got to do now exactly the same on the other side. So I'm on the panel that I was on previously on the other side, and I'm putting in this sort of grey colour, which is one of mine, I think.
So, I mean...
It's massive.
Yeah.
It's big.
No, look, that's... Oh, yeah, that's the front. Sorry.
That's the front. Oh, it's just crazy. The most fiddly bit I've had so far, actually, it wasn't so much of a fiddle on the other side because I didn't have as much cardigan attached at the time. But this panel here runs in the opposite direction, so you knit this like you knit an applied border on a shawl. So you cast on some stitches and then you knit across and knit 2 stitches together, you know, the last one, slip a stitch and knit them together, you know what I mean, and it applies it in the opposite direction. It's going this way as opposed to that way. I found this, I actually put it down, I did a little bit and I was like, oh, this is just a pain, just because you've got all of that weight of cardigan hanging off your needles and you're constantly sort of doing this. But I persevered and I got through that little bit, and now I'm going in the other direction. You picked up stitches. There's loads of picking up stitches, which I really enjoy, so I've not got a problem with that at all. And I'm now doing this other little panel, and then at the end of that panel I'll cast on some stitches and do that bigger panel, and then you do a big long section of decreases, exactly like the other side. And then when I've done that, I think I then do something with this bit. And from what I can gather, you knit like a strip of garter and then you somehow attach it over here and then pick up stitches around. Oh, I have no idea, quite honestly. I read it and then I thought, oh, I shouldn't have read that. I'm just doing it as I get to it, if you know what I mean. And it all seems to make sense when I'm at that point. I think with something like this, if you read too far ahead, it can seem really daunting and really confusing because you've not already previously knit all that other stuff. I think if you just work your way through it, I'm not having any issues with understanding what I need to do. I sometimes just have to think a little bit and think, right, okay, he's told me to pick up X number of stitches. Am I doing that right? And you know, but once I've thought about it for a minute, it's always been fine. I've never been stuck for not knowing what to do. And I'm working this on 5.5mm, and I'm holding a DK weight as the constant, and then I'm using scraps of fingering weight with, you know, held with the DK weight. So it's approximating about an Aran weight, I reckon, which gives me a size. I don't know, it's not, it might be like a medium to large or something, I don't know. It's so oversized anyway that I don't think it'll be a problem. I think even if I'd knit the smallest size, it's probably still oversized anyway. So the DK weight is the King Cole Merino blend, which I don't think, I've cleared out my bag because I swapped bags. I've shown you before, it's King Cole Merino blend and the colourway is Aran. And then I'm just holding scraps of fingering weight. This one is the Dark Side and the Light, the Star Wars inspired colourway, which I love. It's like shades of grey and then some golden browns in there. It's lovely. So I'm just working my way through it, and I've no idea when it will be done because I'm honestly no idea how far through I am. At some point the finishing of it, you pick up stitches all the way along this bottom edge here.
Wow.
All the way along and then knit down, and you can either knit down in brioche, won't be doing that, or in garter. So I'm either going to do garter or I might do my bits and bobs stitch that looks like brioche but isn't brioche. The only thing with that struck me is it's such a different gauge. Brioche or the stitch I use for the bits and bobs, it's such a massively different gauge. It's very, very stretchy that I think putting it onto garter, I'm just not sure whether the two
So just do garter
will be compatible. And I presume, Stephen West's done it, so it must be okay. But I think I will probably just stick to garter.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. And then you also go and then you pick up all around what will be effectively like the neckband.
Right.
So that's the last two finishing things. There's no buttons as far as I'm aware.
Right. That looks like something that the
It's
cast
crazy.
of Blake 7 would wear.
I know. Or it's very, you said new romantic.
Yes, I was going to say Spandau Ballet.
Yeah.
Yes, Girls on Film.
Yeah, definitely. It's very like that because back in the 80s, we did tend to wear things that were sort of oversized like that, didn't we?
Yeah.
Big shoulders and things.
Yeah. So from that, to this.
Ah,
And I don't know if you've ever knit on a project before where no time that you knit on it felt like enough.
gosh, really?
I love this. Look,
Amazing.
I've knit loads on this, and I don't feel like I've knit loads on it. And I don't feel like I've got as far through as I expected to, but
Right.
I sort of don't care because I love knitting on it so much.
It's a fairly small gauge, isn't it? It's not like it's,
Yeah.
you know, we're using DK weight, aren't we? So it's fairly small gauge.
It's just the loveliest thing. It really is. It's like entrancing to knit. It's very rhythmic, and the textures that you're creating are really lovely.
Shall I hold it up?
Yeah. And the yarn is just beautiful, and everything about it it works for me. It really does. I often find that sometimes my elbows hurt when I knit with metal needles, but not on this.
Oh, look at that.
I love it.
Isn't it beautiful?
I hope you love it too.
I do love it.
And I hope you love it too.
Oh, I thought you meant me.
I did mean you.
Oh, right.
But then I was moving on to everyone who's out there. It's the Cascades by Michelle
I
Wong.
think it's lovely.
And what this has done
It's really pretty.
is it sort of taught me that, engaging with the pattern was difficult, but the work was worth it because the finished object looks tremendous.
It's quite a delicate looking pattern, I think.
Yeah.
It's sort of refined and sophisticated, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's the where's the side? That's the side. That's what will run down the
Side.
side.
I mean, how cool is that?
I mean, that's so nice to have that detail, isn't it?
And what it's done
It's
is,
lovely. Looks like an expensive shop bought
Yeah.
jumper, which
once I finish this,
Benedict, wasn't it?
and is the yarn that I've got.
Yes, I bought you an extra skein.
Oh.
And they still had the same dye lot at
That's-
Wool Warehouse. 'Cause
So-
you had a whole batch of.
I have a
skeins,
sweaters quantity
220,
upstairs.
Yeah.
We have the pattern ready to go.
It's all ready to go. Yeah,
That's great. So when the moment is
I
right,
haven't bought the pattern yet. I don't think,
don't worry.
because I just think if I look at the pattern, we might, like I've just said, it might be a little bit intimidating. So
That's okay. I'll just take it bit by
it's
bit.
just lovely. So this again is the King Cole
Great.
Merino Blend DK, but this
Truffle?
is in truffle.
I remembered.
Yeah, truffle.
feels
colour.
lovely.
It's gorgeous.
It's-
Like a mauvey. It's like a mauvey sort of. It's a beautiful colour. It's like a neutral, but with a colour, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not boring.
It's not boring.
No.
It's not like a beige, plain. Although I do like that.
But sometimes that is just not right.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
it is right. But for this, I think if I was knitting this in a boring colour, I don't think it would be anywhere near as pretty as what it is.
No, I think that it's definitely showing it off really, really nicely.
She clearly is extremely clever
Oh, absolutely.
at designing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'd like to knit more of her stuff, and I'm going to.
Made a mistake there.
Yes, I've made loads of mistakes. But no. Look, there's loads of mistakes. I said to you before, I know I've made mistakes. The mistakes, I've not made any mistakes recently.
No.
The mistakes all appeared down here, so it'll all be down here.
Yeah, and it's
there'll
on
be
the
ruffles.
side.
And there'll be ruffles.
Ruffles?
Yeah, I'll
There's
make it.
ruffles?
Ruffles, yeah, it's a character from,
Why is there ruffles?
from a pantomime, I'm sure.
What do you mean?
I'll knit it long enough so it won't be all tight and.
Oh, right, they're called ruffles.
Okay, well, I don't know.
It'll have a nice bit of length, you mean?
It'll have a nice bit of length so that,
I can't be doing with jumpers. Do you know where it's that length where I'm constantly pulling it down
Yeah.
as if it's just not quite long enough?
Yeah.
And I think I have this problem quite a lot with shop bought jumpers, don't I? That they're just not long enough. And I think I must have quite a long torso.
Yeah, maybe. I've not made any mistakes.
Or I don't like it where it hits you so that, if you put your arms up, you'd be like showing midriff. Oh, I can't be doing with that.
I've not made any mistakes on the front or back panels.
All right. It's just the side, down the side.
Yeah, because the sides.
No, nobody's going to be looking. Not even another knitter would come and look down the side of your jumper.
I'll tell you the issue with the sides, and I'm not complaining because I love them. It's just, the problem I've had is you're going round and you're into a panel of, what do you call it, a chart?
Yeah.
And you're into that panel of chart, and sometimes you go all the way through it, but then sometimes you don't.
Oh, right, okay.
Sometimes you've got to stop
It's a
halfway.
very complex chart. Isn't
Yes.
it?
So a couple of times, what I did was
Just got off of it.
I've either carried on
Right.
when I shouldn't have, or I've stopped when I shouldn't have.
Hmm.
But I've now developed a bit of a routine, and I now know more where I'm at, and I
It's
can read my
fine,
knitting
isn't
more.
it? It's fine.
So I won't make any more mistakes up here.
No.
So when you lift your arms up to show your torso, you know that your sides will look nice.
That won't be happening.
What else is on your needles?
So my final thing requires you to just go up there and pass me that basket. Now this project, as you can see, has graduated into a gigantic basket because it also became too big for the bag that's now got my penguono in. And it's lovely actually having it in a basket. It's really lovely because I love to see, every time I come across a little mini that I think, oh yeah, that'll go perfect, I've been popping it in. So I've now just got this lovely collection. Look at that, of minis. And the little bag that I've been working through, well actually, yeah, I've just put one of these in previously, but it's this little bag that Kelly sent me, and these are all Sherry Iris minis, and I've just put in one of them. Oh, it's the prettiest colour, oh my goodness. But her yarns are very delicate and just so lovely. Look at the greens, a tiny hint of pink. I don't know what these colourways are. There's one here that's gorgeous, that one. Look at the different colours in that. Just lovely. I just love her dyeing sort of sense of colour. Look at the yellow. So pretty. So I so enjoyed putting that mini in. So Kelly, thank you so much for sending those. I really am loving putting those in. Look.
It's so much nicer than the other one.
Oh, look. Da, 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 da. It is so much nicer than my first one. Just the colour choices. And can I just tell you something? I'll whisper it because I feel quite bad about it. But this was going to be a gift for someone.
But it's not now.
But I don't know that I can part with it. Is that really bad?
No.
So I think I'm going to have to keep it because I just love it so much. And I very rarely actually knit things for myself. Not really, you know. With this one, I stuck to really sort of no dark colours and nothing particularly bright. Just pretty, gentle sort of colours, but not completely pastel. There's definitely quite a lot of colour going on, but just nothing dark. I wanted it to have a lightness and like a freshness, and I think it's definitely that. But the colour I was telling you about, the Sherry Iris one, is this sort of bluey purple. Can you see it? The colour, you know, is probably not fully coming across, but if you look really closely, it's like a periwinkle blue and then lilacs. And I actually had a look in a shop and I did see a yarn that looked similar. I don't know if it was that one. I can't remember the name of it now. But I'm tempted to order a full skein of it. It did look very similar. It's just so pretty and I so love knitting that one in. Can you see what I mean by the purples and the blues? It's so lovely. And then what I'm putting in now, I got a lovely a lovely birthday present from a friend, and she popped in a mini with it. And I think this is Hedgerow Yarns. It looks like a Hedgerow Yarns to me. It was a 10-gram mini. Oh, isn't that lovely? So that's the one that I'm putting in now. Oh, it's so pretty. And I've just literally done like 2 rows in that, so you can't really see it. But when I was doing, can you remember a couple of episodes back, I mentioned that I'd done a mini skein review where I'd taken 3 mini skeins, 3 20-gram mini skeins, and I'd knit a mitered square. I'd knit some into this blanket, and then I'd also knit some into like effectively what would be a sock, just to see how they knit up and how the colours, you know, was there any pooling, anything like that. Well, these were the 3 yarns that I put into the blanket. So it's this peachy one here, this sort of grey colour, and then this sort of yellowy with spots of green and pink. It was
I like the
those 3. The grey was La Bien Aimée yarn, and I mean it looks lovely in the blanket, but it did pool. That one did pool when I knit it into what effectively would be a sock for me. So I wasn't keen on how that pooled, but in the blanket I think it works fabulous.
That's because you're holding it double, and it's
just because it's a massively, you know, you've got a big long row, whereas in a sock you're going round and round on the same stitch count, aren't you? So
I am right in thinking, aren't you, that you're knitting it double?
Yeah, I'm holding 2 fingering weights together.
And the other one is a plain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that just softens everything out.
It does, it definitely does, but when you've got a massive long row like this, I think I've found that it's less inclined to pull.
Right.
Yeah. This yellowy one here as well, this also pulled in what would have been a sock, yet in the blanket it's totally fine. So I think it goes to show that even if I wouldn't want to knit a particular yarn into a sock because I think, you know, that's going to pull, I would be absolutely happy to put it into the blanket, and that's a great thing for me to know, you know, that I don't need to worry about the whole pooling thing, because I just don't like it in a sock. I just don't think it looks attractive. That's my own opinion, obviously, and I know some people don't mind it at all. But, you know, that was a great experiment to do, just to try it in 3 different types of projects, so that I know that when I see a mini that's sort of dyed in that same technique as the ones that I saw, you know, with these, that I know what sort of projects it will work in, and I think that's really great knowledge to have. So I recommend doing that if you fancy a little experiment. The little one before there was a mini from Jules, I think. I'm not sure what that one was, but that was really pretty. And then this one has been the Sherry Iris, and now I'm putting in a hedgerow. So it's just so lovely. I just love the colours. It's much more me, I think, than my original one, which I do love that original one, but these are more me colours.
Yes.
And that's why I really thought, I just want to keep it. So I'm really enjoying. I've not worked on this for a while, and I just picked it back up the other day, and I knit only yesterday, I think. So I knit. How much is that? 3 inches.
Yeah.
It always looks like it's less.
Yeah.
But actually, when you sort of measure it, that's probably 3 inches that I knit since yesterday. So that's a good amount, really, in just sort of an evening and then a little bit extra. Really loving it. So yeah, this is my bits and bobs, and I'm holding 1 yarn as the constant. So it's 2 fingering weights held together for this blanket. So you could actually use completely all scraps, and just whenever you run out of one, just add in another and just do it in that way. Or what I like to do is to use 1 yarn as the constant, so you've got that kind of creamy background foil, and then just add your bits and bobs of your leftovers as the other colour. So I'm using Cascade Heritage in the Snow colourway, which is this one. It is number 5618, and it's called Snow, and I've just started my 3rd skein, so I was really pleased to get to the 3rd skein. I've got 5 altogether because that's the size that I know, you know, that's the size that I knit for my first blanket. So it's 5 skeins, 500 gram skeins as like the background colour, and then all your bits and bobs. So effectively you will have used 10 skeins worth of fingering weight yarn for the blanket, you know, so it's a really nice cozy size. And I'm just putting in all these leftovers. I've just finished something actually where I used quite a lot of this, so I'm going to put some of this in. This is one of the yarns I dyed up for the Harry Potter giveaway. Do you know the skeins that I've got? It's up here. This is the full skein, and it's the Polyjuice. Oh, it's so pretty. So this was mine. So I thought, I used it in another blanket, which I'll show you in finished objects. And I used quite a lot of it actually, but I thought, that'll be lovely in my bits and bobs. So that's going to go in there as well. And I've just got lots of favourite bits of yarn, you know, that I've come across. Some of it's mine, quite often it's not. It's been gifts from friends. And that's my favourite to add in. I've still got a couple left from Jules, which were these 2 lovely, so they will go in at some point. And I love adding in other people's yarns. I just think that makes it even more special, because I can look at it and remember whose yarn is whose. I think it's just like a knitting thing, isn't it, that you have that ability to remember certain yarns. I certainly can. So now that there's no deadline. There was never really a deadline in the first place, but now that I've decided that I'm going to be selfish and keep this, there's no deadline at all, and I'm just working on it whenever I fancy it, really.
Now it's time for us to go on a very special new adventure. Just down the road from us is a place called Barnard Castle. It's an old market town.
Yeah.
And little did we know that it has a direct link to the formation of the Mason-Dixon line in America. So come with us now as we uncover the birth of Barnard Castle and also discover probably its most famous son, Jeremiah Dixon. Welcome to a brand new season of New Adventures. Over the next 8 episodes, we've lined up some of the most exciting stories and destinations that we've ever uncovered. In past seasons, we focused on the stories of kings, queens, and lords of the manor. But this year, we're going to shift the focus to discover the story of people like you and me. Because for every fort, stately home, and castle, there were hundreds of houses that surrounded them. And over the last 2,000 years, those houses became the towns and villages that make up England. So join us in 2019 as we uncover the most important pieces of history we've ever investigated. This is the story of England, and these are the new adventures of the Bakery Bears. This is the Teasdale Way, a 100-mile pathway running west to east across England, passing some of the most stunning history, places that we absolutely adore, and there's hidden stories everywhere you look. From prehistoric barrows to medieval monasteries, this is absolutely a walk through history, and indeed the very heart of England. So what precisely are we doing here? Well, if you remember, on our last new adventure, we discovered the secrets of Richmond, which lies about 15 miles actually down that way. And if you remember last time, we uncovered the secrets of how a town grows from its hospital to its theatre. But when you arrive in a town, have you ever wondered, when you see a house, how did that house appear right there? Who carved the land out of the wider countryside and gave permission for somebody to build a home? So we have come to the market town of Barnard Castle to try and get to the bottom of this fascinating subject. Along the way, we'll uncover the story of the castle that gave the town its name. But we'll also discover some of the houses which have developed in this beautiful place over the last 2,000 years. And we'll meet some of the wonderful characters who made these houses into their homes. Because the lessons learnt here by the surveyors and the land managers who mapped out this humble Yorkshire town would be taken to the other side of the world, thousands of miles away, to the new world of America, and used in the creation of the Mason-Dixon line, forming part of the borders of 4 US states. This is also the line that separates the North of America with the South of America. Where does our story start? Well, it's just over here. You're looking across at the little village of Startforth on the southern edge of Barnard Castle.
It's hidden just behind those trees there. Its name, Startfirth, tells us exactly who were the first people to build anything of note here.
It was, of course, the Romans. As we discovered last time, when they invaded England 2,000 years ago, they started building forts all over the country. And those forts needed roads to link them all up. And one of those roads passed straight across the river right here and ran off up that way. Now, the river's way too high today, and I'm really disappointed, to be honest, because the pictures that I filmed, which I'll show you in a second, are just unbelievable. I've never seen a road, a Roman road, in quite so perfect condition. And that is, of course, because it's been protected by the water and protected by everything that sat on top of it. But just take a look at these shots from 2003 when the river was nice and low. Look how accurate and neat the stones are. I've never seen anything quite like this before. It just shows you how exceptional these guys were at all these types of things. The building of forts, the building of roads. They were thousands of years ahead of their time because, of course, as we discovered last time, 1,000 years later, the road that they built, which really 2,000 years later, the road that they built straight up the country is still in use today. Now, the thing that excites me the most about these pictures and these stones and this road is it's still down there, perfectly intact, just covered up and kept safe by river debris.
Not long after the road was built here, on the south side of the river, very simple buildings began to appear. Most probably, it was ancient budding entrepreneurs selling food and drinks to passing Roman travellers. Now, the Romans called their roads strata, and a river crossing which doesn't involve a bridge is a ford, so this was known as Strataford, and as the years progressed, it was corrupted into Startfirth. Those original houses are of course long gone, but there's no doubt that the little village of Startfirth was most certainly the seed for all that was to follow.
Now, it took 1,000 years for that seed to begin to bear fruit, but my goodness, when it did, what a crop was in store. For the next 600 years, everything that lay before me was just forest.
The Roman river crossing still existed. In this picture from the 1940s, you can actually see it really clearly. The little village of Startfirth now catered for Anglo-Saxon weary travellers, who now were using the Roman road and river crossing as their main highway through the area.
But then on the 14th of October 1066, everything changed.
William, Duke of Normandy in France, arrived to claim the throne of England. He did so in the most dramatic of fashions, defeating the last Anglo-Saxon king, Harold Godwinson, at the Battle of Hastings, completing the Norman conquest. To pay his loyal knights for their service, he divided up the country into portions.
And he awarded this part of Yorkshire to the Balliol family. Now, around about 1150 AD, the head of the family was a guy called Barnard, and he decided it was time to put his stamp on the area. And I think you'll agree that he did quite a good job, because just take a look at this.
This is Barnard's Castle. You can only imagine how impressive this must have looked when it appeared on the hillside directly above the Roman river crossing. Much like Richmond Castle, the building of Barnard's Castle was the catalyst to the town which would develop in the years that followed.
When this castle was first built, the normal man, the people like you and me, lived in the town ward, and the town ward lays just up the hill, just behind us here. This was the place where they lived and where they worked, and let's go take a little look.
There were buildings scattered all across this part of the castle, from accommodation for the first soldiers who lived and worked here, to stables for the horses used by those very men. Sadly, those buildings are no longer here, but some do remain, like this dovecote. Having one of these was a privilege available only to the lord of the manor, and in it he kept pigeons and other wild birds. Whilst the primary reason for keeping pigeons was to eat them, the feathers were used to stuff beds and pillows, and even the bird's dung was used as fertiliser and also for tanning hides.
Now, Barnard's Castle also contained an outer ward, which was just over there. In it there was a farm, which was actually worked by many of the locals, and they used to be paid with an allowance of corn. There was also a church, and it was also the main entrance into the castle. But where did Barnard and his family live? Well, it was the safest part of the castle, and it's just up here.
The inner ward was the private home of the owners of the estate. It was the grandest and most palatial part of the castle, and it was separated from the rest by this great ditch on one side and the sheer drop down to the river on the other. Smells were a huge problem in the medieval world, as this was a time before proper drainage. Whilst height signified power, it also allowed those who could afford it to literally rise up above everyone else to much clearer smelling air.
It's so difficult to imagine the magnitude of the building that once stood right on this site. I've been here many times before, and I had no clue that stood right here was one of the biggest towers in the whole of the castle. It was a 3-storey block with another little circular tower on the end. There was apartments on the top. There was a guardrobe where the guards would be stationed, and then they would come out and walk the walls and protect the castle. And there was also a porter's lodge. So anyone who was coming to visit, knock on the door of the porter, "Can I come in, please?" "Yes, you can." Or "No, you can't." And it was all stood right here. And when you consider as well that there's a big ditch just down below, there's a huge drop down to the water, this would have looked absolutely monstrous.
The tower was rectangular, and it stretched across the majority of this now open space, linking up with the wall adjacent. As we look further along the wall, we see the castle's bakehouse. That huge recess in the wall was actually the bakehouse water system. Now, the bakehouse provided bread and other baked goods for the lord and his family. Many of the castle's workers, though, were too poor to have an oven of their own, so they would bring their own dough here, and for a small fee it would be baked for them. This truly was once a magnificent building, and so it should be, as in its long history it once belonged to a king of England.
In 1471, Barnard Castle, as it had come to be known, passed into the hands of the future King Richard III. This was the man who would become infamous for his involvement with the princes in the tower, and also for his supposed hunchback.
Richard gained ownership of the castle through marriage. His wife Anne owned it as part of her estate, and he had great plans for the castle. One of the many improvements he made can be found just up here. This oriel window was installed by Richard himself, and what I love about this is it seems throughout history humans just love a view, and you have to admit that this one is pretty special. How do we know that Richard III installed this? Because he engraved his emblem in the stone over the top. Now, it's hard to see it, but just take a look at this picture. That is the wild boar of Richard, Duke of Gloucester.
And he picked the perfect room to put his great picture window, because this was the lord of the castle's great chamber.
This upper room and the adjacent round tower were the private quarters of Barnard Balliol, Richard III, and all others who once owned this great place. Entertaining the most important guests would have been done here. There was little furniture, but the internal walls would have been wooden panelled and then hung with brightly coloured tapestries. These would provide colour, but also much needed insulation from the cold outside. As we leave the great chamber, we now really are entering the inner sanctum of castle life. This was the lord of the manor's bedchamber that we're walking into, so Barnard Balliol was the first man to sleep here in this very room. How did it look? Well, in the centre of the room, a huge 4-poster bed sat, hung with curtains which were drawn at night to give some privacy. That's because some of the most trusted servants stayed in this room as the lord slept. There would have been a big fireplace here, and it would have been the job of one of those servants to keep it alight. Running all the way up the 3 floors of this round tower is this staircase. Sadly, nothing remains of the wooden floors which once would have created the 2nd and 3rd floors, but we know from a 16th century document that this was the abode of the lady of the manor. She would have been attended to by her ladies in waiting, most probably the wives of soldiers who garrisoned the castle. Some of those soldiers would have been stationed actually in this tower up on the 3rd and final floor.
Now, only the best and most loyal soldiers would have served in this, the most dangerous part of the castle, really, because this is the point any attacker would have wanted to get to. Now, in the event of an attack, the stairway we've just walked up would be sealed from the inside. So if the soldiers were to fall up here, if they were to be defeated, you still wouldn't be able to get into the main stronghold and get access to the Lord and his family. And, I mean, it's so high up here. What a view we get.
From the castle grounds across to the town of Barnard Castle and beyond. From here, you truly are the king of the castle. But who's that I see down there? It's my co-host, and she's in search of the perfect place to stop for a little breather. So let's go find her and see if we can find the perfect place for a little knit.
My goodness, we've found a deceptively warm spot for a knit. It's not supposed to be this warm today, Kay.
That's all right, I was just looking at the problem with my yarn cake.
Well, we will be reviewing the Knit Pro, what's it
Ball
called?
winder.
Imminently.
Yeah.
It's not very good.
It's not going to be a positive review.
No, it really isn't. But this is just perfect. What tree is that over there?
They're apple trees.
Wow. And I wonder what, because this used to be a lovely walkway, didn't it?
Yeah.
It was like a stone wall.
It was like a herb garden, a sensory herb garden thing, and then they just completely cleared it off and they've planted a load of apple trees. There are some. Oh, there used to be an apple tree over there.
Right.
It's gone.
Right.
There, look. Do you know? Can you see where?
Yes.
There used to be an apple tree, an old one over there. I'm
Right.
presuming it must have been diseased.
Right.
There's just one left there, and they've planted some small ones. So it's going to be a little orchard, but it won't be a little orchard for probably about 20 years.
These seats are epic. And they're epic because it's lovely and comfortable. And there's a few of them kicking around, although there's some older ones over there which don't look quite as nice as these.
These are nicer.
But there's a space there for a wheelchair.
That's true, there is, yeah.
But if you don't have someone with you with a wheelchair, I can stick my legs out.
Oh, right.
It's perfection.
Yep.
Neil, have you heard of John Balliol?
I have. I don't know why I have.
Guy Balliol was the person who built the first castle here, which was a wooden one. And then it was Barnard, obviously, as we found out, who then built
Barnard.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't sound quite so romantic, I think, when you say
it
Barnard.
doesn't.
And one of the things that I've not been able to find out, and I've looked everywhere, is how and why and when it changed from Barnard's Castle to Barnard Castle. Guy Balliol was the person who built the castle here, and Guy Balliol was an ancestor of John Balliol, and John Balliol was a claimant to the throne of Scotland who fought against William Wallace.
Wow.
So Braveheart,
Yeah.
the film, one of the characters in that is John Balliol. I mean, unbelievable to think that John Balliol, he'd portrayed, and by then I suppose he would have been as Scottish as they come, but he's French.
Sounds like a Scottish. Oh, right.
They're
Sounds
French.
Right.
Balliol is a region of Picardy.
Where?
Picardy in France.
Picardy?
Picardy.
Oh, my gosh. That's what Bryony...
Did you know that there was a part of France called Picardy?
That's what Bryony used to say when she wanted picking up when she was little. She used to go, Picardy, Picardy.
As knitability spots go, it's good,
It's good.
but I don't think it's quite so good as Richmond.
No.
No. I think Richmond wins, and it
Yeah.
wins because of the whole privacy element,
Yes.
which we've just demonstrated to absolute perfection, folks.
Oh, I can't be doing with it.
Folks, there are 5 people
in the castle at the
And
moment.
they're like all within 2 feet
This
of it.
is vast. Richmond, for those sort of private little nooks, I think is always going to win. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we got to score it for Disability.
I'll probably go with a 7.
7.
Oh,
There you go. No, I did it deliberately.
did you see the wind blow my tail end over there?
7 is definitely the right score for Disability. Now, we're not here to discover the story of the castle. Oh no! We're here to uncover the story of the town because there's still so much to find out.
From the oldest remaining house in Barnard Castle, dating from 1483, to the story behind this rather intriguing building.
And what of Jeremiah Dixon, arguably Barnard Castle's most famous son? How did he find himself in America, mapping out the Mason-Dixon line? Well, you're going to have to come back later in the show to find out. I'll see you then for part 2.
Now, Barnard's Castle does not sound quite so romantic as Barnard Castle. And actually, I think I prefer the American pronunciation of Bernard.
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 I had to think what it was then, yeah.
It's funny, isn't it, with names, how names conjure up
Yeah.
an image.
Yeah.
And I don't know why Bernard. It doesn't quite...
No, I mean, in this country, if you're called Bernard, you're generally an older man. It's not a...
Or what about 4 Weddings and a Funeral? Bernard Delaney. That was his middle name, wasn't it?
Yeah. And he did, but now he would be an older man, wouldn't he? Because that was back in.
What that shows you is that is the quite wrongly, because there'll be some amazing Bernards out there. It's quite wrongly the stereotype which gets attached to the name Bernard. But it set me thinking about names.
Well, it made us think, didn't it? Because I said to you, well, do I look like what my name is? And do you look like a Dan? And you do. I think you kind of grow into what your name is, don't you?
Your name is everything. My eldest brother was nearly, literally, to the day that they went and got him, properly named, he was nearly called René. And I'm telling you, his life would have taken a completely different course had he been René and not Dom.
And not Dominic.
I sort of wish he was René.
I know, you probably just
I would
call
have
him...
had years...
But you probably just call him Ren. And actually, that's quite cool, I think.
Only now since Kylo
Ren. Yeah, that's what I used to think of.
But, sometimes I think of names, and I think of names as like colours, when you go into like B&Q and you're looking at the different colours, and if you found the plainest, most boring grey, that would be Dan Jones.
It would not.
Because it's the most common, boring name.
It is not.
It is.
And he said this, and I said, no, it's not. I said, Daniel is a really strong name, isn't it? And
it is. The problem is when you add the Jones.
Well, I'm also Jones, aren't I?
Yeah, but you're not Dan Jones.
Well, no.
You're K Jones.
Yeah, exactly, which is equally as dull. I mean, it's 3 letters. My mum, she named all of her children names because she doesn't like it when people shorten people's names. But actually, that still happened. So it's just one of those things, isn't it?
It is, and it set me thinking about what if Kay was called Gladys.
I think I'd be super cool. I think I'd be a super cool Gladys.
And what if I was Clint?
Gladys and Clint. But you see, I was nearly... My middle name is Frances.
Right.
And I was nearly Frances Kay.
That is cool. Frances is I think that's a very sort of... You could be CEO of Apple.
I could, couldn't I?
And be called Frances.
Frances.
Whereas I'm doubting there'll ever be a CEO of Apple called Gladys.
You never know.
Although, here's hoping there is.
Absolutely.
Because Gladys to me is a lovely lady.
It's a brilliant...
She definitely knits.
It's a brilliant name. I love these old sort of traditional names,
yes.
Old-fashioned type names.
Queenie,
yeah, you see?
Folks, it's time for us to find out. Kay Jones, what's off your needles?
Right, I've got 3 things because you have nothing.
I put the brakes on.
Oh, right. Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's all right saying...
That's his excuse.
No, I did put the brakes on. Who was woe is me the other day because they cast off something that.
Oh, I know.
Yes,
that's really mad.
yes. So.
These things happen, don't they? But the first thing I finished is my lovely Goffy socks. There they are. And they're so nice. I'll take one off and show you.
I think I got the better view then.
Did you?
I think we had the better view.
Well, that way around.
That's the way you just showed it to me. It's not the same.
It's the same. No. I don't know what you mean.
Like that. Because then everyone out there gets to see the lovely pattern twice. Whereas before,
right, okay,
that's what they were seeing.
Yeah, all right, sorry.
And these could not be more perfect.
Oh, they're lovely.
I mean, it's like...
I'll get Dan to put in the photo that's on the front of the pattern.
Will you?
Yes, I will. Dan will be putting in that photo right now.
I love it when I get instructed as we're filming.
Look, I'm just going to put it on my arm so that you can see.
You make a sock puppet.
Hello, little coffee sock puppy.
Hello.
So that's the front of the foot and the leg, if you like. But it's lovely. It's a cable and just simple eyelet pattern, and the cable it's Bryony and Goffy doing that. You know, they're best friends. And then the little eyelets, it's Bryony and Goffy walking together. So it's just sweet, isn't it? It's just really sweet design, I think. And it's only on the front. I decided just to put it on the front because I liked seeing the stripes. I have striped it myself. It's not self-striping. So I used 3 colours of the Sheepies Metropolis. You can see in Goffy shades. And just striped it myself, and it used hardly any yarn really of the 3 skeins. You could easily get 2 pairs, just by changing up the colours a little bit. It's incredibly light, this yarn. The whole pair, normally a pair of fingering weight socks for me weighs around about 60-65 grams for a me or Bryony size. These weigh 51 grams. It's very, very light. It knit up for me to like a sport weight gauge. I used 2.75mm needles, and for this size, which is normally a 64 stitch, I used 56 stitches. And it seems to come out the same size as a 64 stitch. So I did put 3 sizes in the pattern. I was only going to put 2 in, and the reason I was only going to put 2 in, if I'd done 3 sizes, so like a smallest size as well, it would mean that on the front of the sock ended at the purl stitches, and I like to have some knit stitches here so that it makes picking up those corners much cleaner. Yeah. So I was only going to do a medium and a large, but then I thought, do you know what, I'm going to pop it in anyway, the size small, because that might not bother some people. It might just be one of my things. And then it's a more rounded pattern. There's 3 sizes in there. There's a small, medium and large. Lovely Sarah Hepworth said she would test knit me a pair of these, and it's brilliant because she always knits what would be a 72 stitch size for her. So with these, she knit the size up, which was the 64 stitch. And her colours, it was really sweet. This was so lovely of her. I couldn't believe it that she'd done this. But she obviously knew that these were Goffy inspired, and she went searching for images of Goffy, and she found there's a pink version of Goffy, which we do have, and Sarah didn't know this, and I sent her a picture afterwards, but she found this image of a pink Goffy. It's 3 shades of pink, and she ordered the Metropolis yarn to match the pink Goffy, and she sent me a photo, and I said, Sarah, I can't believe you've done this. She's such a thoughtful person. So thank you so much, Sarah, for testing those so quickly. So this is a platinum pattern. So it's a patron only pattern. So it will be going out to gold and platinum patrons today.
You can follow the link and you can download them right now.
Download the pattern.
So it's free to gold and platinum patrons.
Yeah.
And it's the 3rd of this year's collection of 4.
Yes, this is the 3rd, and I'll actually be talking about what will be the 4th one in a little while. I think it's a great opportunity to try this yarn. I didn't find a problem with this yarn. However, Sarah she said it was a little bit dodgy in patches. She said it wouldn't stop her trying it again. I just wanted to let you all know that I didn't have a problem, but she did have issues with a couple of her skeins. It's $5.99 for 50 grams. So for 100 grams, that would be about £12, which is about the price of an opal. But it does go a long way. You get 200 metres for 50 grams, which to me made me think it would be a normal sock weight yarn, but I think it's a bit thicker, and I think it's because it's quite light that you get in that yardage. So I would say if you haven't tried it, it's worth a try, or you can just use an alternative sport weight yarn. I think Knit Picks, I'm sure, maybe do one. Or, you know, there is a 64 stitch count in the pattern. You could just use normal fingering weight and a 64 stitch and you'd be fine. So it's quite flexible, and also because there's a 48 stitch size as well, you could use DK with the 48 stitch, and that would be the equivalent of the sort of size medium. So it's a very flexible pattern, I think.
Cool. What else is off your needles?
Well, this is the accidental finishing of items, and I'll tell you why it was accidental, because I was going to make this bigger and then I decided not to, and I'll tell you the reason why. It's my garter stitch blanket that was inspired by the one that Joji is making, and I finished my lovely blanket. So started it down here. It's like just a lap size, but it goes, this is the kind of width. It's quite a nice, you know, it's very nice lap size. So it goes from that end across and across and across, and it's still going and it's still going, and it finishes over here. Just a really nice size. I hold it in front of Dan, there we go. Really nice size. I used, as Joji did, I've used 3 strands of fingering weight held together, and Joji used all sort of greys, shades of grey, because that's the colour she uses a lot and she had loads of leftovers. I decided to use pinks, purples and sort of peaches, so it's all different shades of those colours. And mine's slightly different in that I put an I-cord edging running down each side, because I had a feeling that I might just use it as this lap size, and that's actually what I've ended up doing. Also, I think what Joji was doing was, I don't know, but I think she was kind of cutting all 3 colours and then bringing in 3 new colours. I'm not entirely certain about that, I'll be honest. But what I did was, just every time I ran out of one particular colour, I just magic knotted another one in and carried on. So I only had the 2 ends to weave in at the end, which was brilliant. And because it's garter, really thick garter, you don't see those magic knots at all. So I was happy to do that. And by doing that, it does produce this very gradual, very sort of gradiated look, I think, because you're only changing one colour at a time whenever that colour runs out. Now, the reason I decided I was going to make this bigger, and what I was going to do actually was use the technique that I used in my burrow wrap, because effectively this is a gigantic middle section of a burrow wrap minus the eyelets, and I thought, oh well, I could just pick up along the edges and knit some more. But then actually it gave me the thought of, maybe I won't do that, and maybe what I will do is I might design a burrow blanket, because I must admit, when I started knitting the burrow wrap, when I was knitting this, straight away my first thought was, oh my goodness, this would make a fantastic blanket. So that was at the sort of back of my mind, and when I was knitting this I thought, well, this is just so lovely, using 3 strands together, and I knew the size that produced holding 3 strands together, that maybe that's what I would do. I would work out a burrow blanket using 3 strands rather than 2, which is what the wrap is. And I'm not quite sure how I'm going to work the colours yet, whether I'm going to do it exactly like the burrow wrap where you've got sections with eyelets, or whether I'm going to do it more of a solid. I'm not decided on that yet, and what colours I'm going to use and things like that. You know, that thought was there, so I thought, well, rather than spend the time doing that now, I will wait, and when I sort of get round to starting a burrow blanket, it's at that point then that I can, you know, do the full version, if you like. But this is an absolutely perfect lap size blanket, and it's great for my knitting chair in the morning, so it'll go on the back of my knitting chair. I cast on 96 stitches with a 6mm needle, 3 strands together, and that just has produced the most cushy, can you see how beautiful that is? Cushy fabric, but it's still got a lovely amount of stretch. It's just so nice, and it was such a lovely thing to knit on, and I really enjoyed, you know, the colour changes, and because I was only changing one at a time, it was just so nice to see the comparison of sections as I was changing colours. And I put in some clementine. Can you see where it's this orangey here? That's got some clementine in it. And then I was telling you I'd also put in polyjuice. This whole section here has got the polyjuice in, but you can see how I've changed the other colours and how different it looks in the sections. And that's what I really loved about just changing one colour at a time. So I really enjoyed knitting this, and I certainly will at some point, I'm sure, work out a burrow blanket design. But for now I'm very happy having this beautiful little blanket.
Cool. What else?
Oh my goodness.
It's off your needles.
Right. And this is another pair of socks. And this is a pair of socks that I showed you last time that I was working on a design. The tragic thing about these socks is that very shortly after the last podcast went out, literally I think 10 minutes after you'd pressed publish, I had a message.
No, it hadn't published.
Oh, it hadn't?
It had gone out to patrons.
Right, okay.
Because it goes out to Baker Bear patrons about 12 hours before it goes out to the rest of the world, and it was one of the patrons who...
Yeah, it was one of our patrons who was also a lovely friend, and she sent me a very nice message because she wanted to let me know that the socks that I just designed, the one moment in time socks...
These socks
here, that there was a very, very similar design already on Ravelry that had been on Ravelry since 2005. It's a design that was put out by Interweave, and it's called Embossed Leaves, I believe. I hadn't heard of this design, I hadn't seen this design, but as soon as she saw my socks, she remembered this design and wanted to let me know that there was already a design out there that looked very much like mine. So straight away I went and looked at this design, and she's quite right, it does appear to use the same motif that I've used. Now I obviously haven't got the pattern, I hadn't bought it, I'd never seen it, I haven't seen the chart or anything like that, but from looking at it, it does look to be the same motif.
It's not exactly the same though, is it? Because I didn't think it had the swirly
No,
bit.
it's not exactly the same. From what I can gather from the notes that a couple of Ravelers had put on there, that interweave pattern is only one size. Again, I haven't seen the pattern, so I don't know that for definite, but a couple of people in their notes said that because the pattern was only one size, you had to adjust the sizes just by using different needle sizes. What I'd done when I found this motif, and I found it in a stitch dictionary, was I looked at it and thought, okay, well, it won't really fit any of the sizes exactly, so I played around with it and I changed it to make it fit 3 sizes. To do that, what it meant was I ended up with this wavy stockinette stitch section down the side,
which actually I think makes
the
design.
I think it's so pretty.
It is.
It's down the side. On the front of the sock you just get...
It looks like wind. Do you know what I mean?
I
like
just loved it so much. The front of the sock just has a pearl ridge between them, which is what the other design just had a pearl ridge like this running through. Whereas mine, that's on the front of the sock, but then mine on the side of the sock, as you can see, it has this beautiful stocking stitch wave running down. So I'd made that adjustment, but then I also adjusted the leaves as well for the 3 different sizes, so that it would fit the 3 different sizes. Obviously it's a different toe because it's my umbrella toe, but as soon as I saw it, and also she indicated to me that maybe Interweave might not be happy about another pattern coming out.
Even though you did find another totally free.
Even though then another friend very kindly said to me that she'd also seen another pattern that used the same motif, again on a sock, and that was actually a free pattern. So I went and looked at that. Again, there was only one size, and the chart was actually slightly different. It wasn't exactly the same, but effectively it kind of looked the same as mine. So those things really together made me realise that in good consciousness, I couldn't really release this as a paid-for pattern.
It's frustrating because, as you've just demonstrated,
it's incredibly frustrating.
This is a different. It's a different design.
At the end of the day, I would say all knitting designers at some point have used stitch dictionaries to find stitches to then transfer into designs, and quite often that motif that's found will be modified in some way to make it fit, as I did with this one, or it might just be transferred into shawls, into jumpers, into whatever. Really, if it's out of a Stitch dictionary, then I would say, nobody as such owns those motifs, do they? Because it wouldn't be in a Stitch dictionary if that was the case, would it?
No, it would be like claiming ownership of knits and pearls.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a very grey thing, copyright, and I think ultimately it comes down to the integrity of the person. Maybe, partially the integrity of the person, because a lot of people actually said to me, I think it's different enough that you should put it out.
You wouldn't feel
I wouldn't feel comfortable doing it,
not.
and also just the fear of being approached at some point by Interweave, if they happen to find out, and dealing with that, if it did turn out to be slightly unpleasant, just wouldn't. I wouldn't enjoy that. I have had a tiny experience of someone indicating that I might have copied something of theirs, and it was very unpleasant and completely untrue. Just a horrible thing to deal with, really. So I just thought, right, okay, I'm just going to have to chalk it up to experience, and that's it, really. So I was really quite down about it for a few days, wasn't I? And because I'd taken photos and everything, we'd gone to Fountains Abbey, I'd finished the socks, we'd gone to Fountains, I'd taken the most beautiful photos. They're gorgeous, aren't they?
Yeah.
I was just so disappointed.
But then a solution presented itself, because, as we mentioned with the Best Friend socks, Kay through the year releases some exclusive gold and platinum access only patterns.
Yeah.
And so the next one is due out in autumn.
Yeah.
And what happens in autumn?
The leaves fall.
The leaves fall from the trees. So it seemed absolutely perfect as well, considering the amount of people who've said how much they want to knit these. It seemed the perfect sort of solution to what was a really frustrating situation.
Yeah.
So these will be available exclusively to gold and platinum patrons, free of charge, in September.
In September, and I just love them, and I love knitting them, and it produces such a lovely pair of socks. So the thought that lots of people will be able to knit these, even though it wasn't my original plan, really sort of made me think, oh, right, okay, that's okay then. I haven't not wasted my time, because I enjoyed knitting them, and I've got a pair of socks that are lovely.
You haven't wasted your time at all.
No. They've just taken a different route.
Yes.
And the yarn I used, I love this yarn. Isn't it just the prettiest? It's from Kelly, Lay Family Yarns, and it's called Love Hearts. And it's just gorgeous. I love it. So those socks will be making an appearance in the autumn, like Dan said, and when they'll become a platinum pattern.
Yeah.
Yay!
So everything
Happy ending.
Turned out all right.
Happy ending.
In the end.
Yes.
2 episodes ago now, on our last new adventure, episode 125, when we started our Battle of the Fish and Chips.
Oh, yeah.
So, without further ado, I think we should get back to Barnard Castle, where in the course of part 2, we will be sampling our second of the 2 and then deciding who wins. Will it be Richmond or will it be Barnard Castle? Let's find out. Welcome back to New Adventures. Now, as we leave the private quarters of the Lord of the Castle, we're going to head back over into the town ward. This, of course, was the site of the very first homes in Barnard Castle that people like you and me would have lived in. These were the soldiers who worked and manned the castle walls, and they would have lived communally in barrack blocks. But very quickly, these men started to lay down roots in what was their new home. Now, roots normally leads to wives, and wives lead to children and families. And whilst this castle is big, it wasn't big enough to cope with the soldiers, their wives, and their children. So a solution was needed. And I wonder if Bernard Balliol, the builder of Barnard Castle, came up here to the top of his tower to ponder that problem.
As he looked across his estate, he clearly came to the conclusion there was only one place suitable for the very first actual houses to be built.
Because he chose the only place completely out of view of his castle. Yes, he built Barnard Castle's very first street, Thorngate Wynd, on the foot of the hill that his castle was built on. He really must have thought, out of sight, out of mind.
But somehow, I can't imagine the people who used to live here, surrounded by their horses and their work and the smells of everyday life in a castle, wouldn't have minded at all that they now got the opportunity to live here. Far enough from the castle so you had a little privacy, but close enough so you could walk to work every morning. We're making our way up from the riverbank onto Thorngate Wynd. This was the site selected for Bernard Balliol's first homes in Barnard Castle. Now, the original homes are of course long gone because they were built of sticks, straw and mud. The people who lived here had little or no money at all. They were given land by their lord to live on, but they had to build the house that they lived in themselves.
Now, I find the root of this process absolutely fascinating because when you consider the modern fascination with home ownership, back when these very first homes they weren't built, of course, because it was just the land being given to the people to build on. But when these first buildings were appearing, no money was changing hands at all because it was in the Lord's interest to give his worker somewhere to call home. It got him out of sight of his castle, and also it would give that worker immense pride to have somewhere to call home.
Over the next 200 years, very slowly but surely, the houses down by the river started to increase, and the next major development of homes was here on Bridgegate. But as the year 1383 dawned, the course of civilization was about to make a dramatic shift.
Now, by medieval standards, castles were very clean places. You had lovely stone and wooden floors and lots of servants to take care of you. The same could not be said for the peasants living essentially in mud houses on Thorngate Wynd. That was the perfect environment for the outbreak of the plague.
As Genghis Khan's empire spread across Europe, the plague seems to have travelled with them. In its wake, it left death, as Europe lost conservatively 50% of its population. Suddenly places like Barnard Castle were in trouble because there were no soldiers left to man the walls and servants left to work the estate.
And in a weird twist of fate, this terrible event was actually the catalyst for the beginning of the world which we all now, the society which we all now live within, because suddenly it was time for the Lord to start to actually pay for the people who worked on his estate. And the better you were at your job, the more money you got paid. And with this influx of cash into the common man's pocket, not only did the high street start to boom, but the houses and the quality of the houses immediately changed. Just take a look at this. This is the frame of a crook house, called such because of the whole piece of wood which was stuck within the house, which the house was then built around. Now, these houses were so well built. Here you see the frame. Here you see an actual house. Many of these houses still exist in the country today, and let me tell you, they change hands for lots of money.
Normal people now began to accumulate such wealth that they could afford to build stone houses like this one. Just a 2-minute walk from Thorngate Wynd lies Blagrave's house. In 1484, this was the home of Joan Forrest, but today it's the oldest remaining home in Barnard Castle, although now it's a restaurant, so you can actually go in there and have some dinner. Houses now started to appear much more quickly. The general population had money in their pocket and they were ready to spend it. The Lord of Barnard Castle, whenever he needed more staff or an influx of cash, would portion off another section of land and sell it to the highest bidder. As the years progressed, the homes in Barnard Castle edged ever closer to the castle.
Until finally, 600 years after the very first houses were built down at the bottom of the hill at Thorngate Wynd, the first houses appeared literally on the walls, literally and virtually attached to the walls of the castle. And it's into this midst that Barnard Castle's probably his most famous son appears. This is Jeremiah Dixon. Now, he was a surveyor and an amateur astronomer, and it was actually his brother John. He came from a family of surveyors, and surveyors, for those of you who don't know, they were the men who they would look at a piece of land, they would measure it and inspect it, and then they would segregate it up, ready to then be sold or given to someone who was maybe going to build a house on it or put a horse on it. And he came from a family of surveyors, and it was his brother John who actually surveyed the majority of the modern town of Barnard Castle.
Whilst at school just around the corner from here, Jeremiah became fascinated by astronomy and also the family trade of surveying. After leaving school, he was employed as assistant by famous astronomer Charles Mason, and over the coming years, they undertook a number of groundbreaking projects, from tracking the transit of Venus across the night sky to their most famous assignment of all. In America, a dispute had arisen between Pennsylvania and Maryland. They had been unable to agree on their boundary lines, and so they sent for Mason and Dixon. They arrived in 1763, and for the next 5 years, they worked drawing their now famous line across the country that would become the United States of America. Every mile, they would lay a stone brought with them from England. Jeremiah Dixon's surname possibly even gave rise to the name Dixieland.
So by the 1700s, the homes in Barnard Castle, which had started way down there at Thorngate Wynd, had stretched all the way up the hill. And we have to remember that this was a time before refrigerators. The homes needed somewhere to go and buy their most important items, and two of the most important items that they needed was milk and butter. And that's how this place got its name. This is the Butter Mart, and you could say that this is the world's first supermarket.
It was gifted to the town by a man called Thomas Breaks, and it opened in 1747. It is, as you can see, octagonal in shape, and it's topped off by a bell turret and a weather vane. If we brave the traffic and we head inside, just take a look at these wonderful columns, which help form the veranda above. Originally, these columns were enclosed in with iron railings. One side, though, was left open so customers could get in and out. The inner enclosed area over the years has been used as a jail and a storage area for the town records. The bell on the top, though, to this day is rung during the funeral of local firemen. But it's the weather vane on the top which has the most interesting story to tell.
Just take a look at this picture, and those two bullet holes piercing that flag. Now that flag sits on the very top of this Butter Mart, and the story for how those two holes got in that flag begins just up there at the Turk's Head pub.
The year was 1803, and tensions were high across England. There were great fears that Napoleon Bonaparte was about to invade, and so troops were garrisoned up and down the country to defend against any such attack. One of those troops was a man named Taylor, and one afternoon he stopped in here for a drink. As the afternoon wore on and the drinks began to flow, an argument broke out between Taylor and a local gamekeeper called Cruddas. Both claimed to be the better shot, and a competition was called for. The weather vane was chosen as the target, and you can imagine the commotion as the contents of the pub emptied onto the street to see who would win. Would you believe the competition was a tie? Looking at the position of those bullet holes, that each man most certainly was as good as each other. But what is that I see on the horizon? Yes, it's time for the conclusion of our Battle of the Fish and Chips. Who will win, Richmond or Barnard Castle? Let's find out.
This is a nice spot for a picnic. And we have had our picnic.
We have.
In the Battle of the Fish and Chips. Now, today we went to a very sort of cool place, and I was saying to Kay, I think that it's run by a young girl called Katie, and I think that what she's trying to do is, I mean, brilliant. She's clearly been an entrepreneur and trying to create something which she could franchise, because it has a real sort of chain vibe going on, which actually I quite like in a fish and chip shop. You know, it has, everyone is very sort of young and hip, and they all dress really, really nicely.
It's not normally like that in a chippy.
No. Did you think those fish and chips were better or worse? The same?
It's a tough one, really, because I do like the ones in Richmond. They felt a little bit more greasy than the ones in Richmond,
Yeah.
actually. Did you think that as well?
Yeah. Your fish in particular.
Mm.
I tried a bit of case fish and I was shocked actually at how greasy that was.
Yeah.
Because my sausage really wasn't that greasy at all.
Right.
So I do think that the one in Richmond is going to pip it just slightly.
I think so.
And also, there are lots of places here. It's a similar town. It's It's funny though, isn't it? It's reminiscent, but it is very different to Richmond.
Yeah. It's got the same kind of facilities, I would say.
Yeah, so there's restaurants and there's there's Costas and there's a supermarket so you could go and grab something and there's
Yeah.
lots of places to come and sit and eat. We can't really criticise Barnard Castle for those fish and chips being worse, can we?
No.
So what score then do we think for picnicability?
Out of 10 again, is it?
Yes.
I would probably go with an 8.
Yes.
Were you going to say
Yes,
8?
yes.
Oh, we're in tune today,
Come on.
clearly.
Neil, the interestability is pretty stunning, to be honest, because I've learned.
It's brilliant down by the river.
Yeah.
You could have a really great walk. down there.
That is the only place where if someone had turned up today with a wetsuit and said, "Come on, I'll take you in," I think I'd have gone. To think that a completely intact, pristine-looking Roman road is down there is just, it's amazing. And
It's a lovely river.
It is, it's gorgeous. It's the Tees, different river to...
Different river.
Yeah, I had no clue that Jeremiah Dixon of the Mason-Dixon line went to school just
Amazing.
over there.
It's a small world, isn't it?
It's crazy to think that the majority of sources I found said that the word Dixieland comes from Mason-Dixon. There are some sources that say that the word Dixieland comes from the fact that a lot of the south of America was French-speaking,
Right.
and the French for 10 is dix,
Yes,
D-I-X.
that's true.
And that's what was written on the back of their $10 notes.
Oh, right, okay.
So you would pay for dinner with Dixies.
Right,
So,
okay.
there's an argument,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
got to be Jeremiah Dixon.
You would think so, wouldn't you?
It has to be.
That seems a more plausible idea.
I had no idea as well that the moment, and this really is sort of key for understanding the reason why the world we live in today is the way that it is, because of the plague in 1383 and the wiping out of all the peasants, all the people who worked on estates like this at Barnard's Castle. Suddenly, there wasn't very many left, so they could start charging for their services. And that was the beginning, really,
Right.
of commercialism. The rain
It is actually,
starting to come
I know,
down.
and can I just tell you, I've got washing on the line at home,
I don't think it's going to hit home.
so it better
'Cause
not
we're-
be raining at home on my washing.
We're some distance from home.
We
so
are, yeah, that's true.
Look, before
Starting to rain.
before it starts to really pour, we need to give it a score and then plot it on our leaderboard.
Yeah.
Oh yes, so
Interestability.
interestability.
It's going to be quite
It's a good one, isn't it?
I would say 9.
I agree with you
Let's go for
completely.
9,
So
yeah.
9 plus 8 is 17.
Yeah.
Plus another 7 is 24.
24.
So if we plot that on the leaderboard, I'm delighted to tell you, Richemont is top with 27.
Right.
Second is Great Ayton with 26.
Right.
Third is Barnard Castle
Gosh,
with 24.
right.
And coming in last, a distant last,
Well, yeah,
with
it will
17, is Rosebery Topping.
It's going to be staying at the bottom, I reckon. So is it true that Charles Dickens once visited here?
It absolutely is true.
Yes.
And shall we go and find out where he stayed?
Yes,
Let's do
let's.
it.
On the 1st of February 1838, a young Charles Dickens arrived in Barnard Castle with his illustrator Hablot Brown to undertake research for his third novel, Nicholas Nickleby. After a 2-day carriage ride from London, he arrived here at this former pub, and you can imagine his trusty stagecoach trundling through that wide carriage arch on its way to the now derelict stable block. Dickens seems to have gone down well with the bar staff as he told his friends, "Say you know me and I'll give you free ale." Every morning, Charles would take a walk along the main street, and the clockmakers directly opposite his lodgings must have caught his eye. It's now this tandoori restaurant, but back then it was known as Humphrey's Clockmakers. 2 years later, Charles Dickens debuted to the world a weekly magazine called Master Humphrey's Clock, and this was the first cover. This humble publication would introduce the world to some of his most famous books and characters, from Mr. Pickwick of Pickwick Papers, Barnaby Rudge, and the Old Curiosity Shop. Such wonderful inspiration from his stroll along Barnard Castle High Street.
So that's it. We've traced the history of this wonderful place.
From its humble beginnings as a Roman river crossing to the arrival of Barnard's Castle and the town which of course would follow.
And the story of how Barnard Castle developed into the town we see today was of course duplicated in places all across Europe. But I don't think anyone could have imagined that the lessons learnt here, planning and building this town, would have been taken to the other side of the world with Jeremiah Dixon and the building of the Mason-Dixon line. From now on, we're going to think of Barnard Castle as our very own Dixieland. I'll see you next time for more new adventures.
So that's it. The Battle of the Fish and Chips is over. And there was only ever really one winner. I'm afraid it was Richmond.
It was, but I didn't have any tummy problems or anything.
Nothing wrong at all. We were spoilt with the quality
We
of
were.
said fish
They were
and
both
chips.
very good, but one of them just pipped the other one.
Yes, it is just that they are as good as you would get anywhere.
Yeah, they're not as greasy.
Now, folks, I have got to say the hugest thank you to Claire and Bill Rice.
Wow.
Who went out. I put a call out in the Bakery Bears patron forum, and I said, does anyone live near the Mason-Dixon line? And a few people got in touch, but Claire was the first. She was like straight on it, and so we started a dialogue, and off they went out. And not only, what was so amazing about what they filmed was, not only did they film on the Maryland side, but they also filmed on the Pennsylvania side as well.
Amazing.
So we got
Amazing.
Mason-Dixon line from both sides of said line.
It looks beautiful. I said to Dan straight away, I want to walk on that path. It looks fantastic.
Yeah.
It looks brilliant walking.
Yes.
Dan was blown away because he said, just come and look at this. Just come and look at this that's been sent to me. Because, you know, he said, oh, Claire says it's rubbish, but just look.
She did.
It was just amazing, Claire.
Exactly what I asked for.
It's fantastic.
And, you know, when you're producing a show, that is always what you need. If you do exactly what is asked of you, then the person who asked you is always going to be thrilled.
Yeah.
And I was.
He was.
And hopefully all of you were. Because what an amazing story.
Brilliant.
Who would have thought?
So unexpected. We had no clue, did we? We had no clue. And just a brilliant connection to, you know, because we obviously know lots of you in America and...
Around the Mason-Dixon line.
Yeah, and it was just, gosh, that could
You
be
may
so
be.
close to where
Yes.
we are here.
Especially
and
when you consider how the Teasdale Way looked.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
how that path
Look
looked.
very similar.
Now, folks, please do remember, none of what you see would be possible without our Bakery Bears patrons. So if you would like to find out how you can keep us on air, access more of what we do, because this is but the tip of the iceberg, then have a read up there, and you can follow the link down there and you can find out all about it. And speaking of the tip of the iceberg, the special gold edition of the show, the extended director's cut, is available right now. And it is quite a little bit longer, because I've had to take the shears to this episode quite hard.
We filmed a lot, didn't we? Actually?
We did, because the story is really quite epic. That means next time we will be making another cake.
Oh, and we know what we're doing. It's a pudding.
Okay.
It's a proper pudding.
We're back to what it says on the title.
Yes.
Excellent answer.
And it looks astounding.
So tune in next time for another amazing pudding. And that means it's time for the Endy Bits.
Endy Bits.
Neil, swish and flick
Swish and flick.
is obviously swishing and flicking.
It is very much swishing and flicking.
So the cowl is active and exciting.
It is. There's so many entries, so many posts. It's just blown me away, to be honest, how involved people have got. And so many socks, so many house socks, fantastic looking socks and all different colour combinations. And now I'm seeing all the burrow wraps.
And to think,
So-
we're just at the start of this whole
We're only
journey.
at the start. I know.
And, I hope you don't get too excited when we tell you that it's only 2 weeks now until the launch of the next pattern.
The next one. So the next one will be coming out on the 28th of June. So it's pattern number 2 on the 28th of June. And on the 21st of June, so the Friday before that, I will be putting up a pattern page, as I did with the burrow wrap, just to tell you what yarn I'd used. And it will only say Swish and Flick pattern number 2. It won't give the name or anything like that. But it will... Somebody sent me a message, actually. It was really sweet. When I put up the pattern page for the burrow wrap before it had come out, someone sent me a message and said, oh my goodness, do you realise that it says shawl stroke wrap on there? And, did you mean to give that away? And I did do that on purpose because I did want to let people know the type of project it was, because I think people do like, knitters do like to sort of plan a little bit. And it was only a week before, and I thought, that's okay, I'm happy to do that. And I think that did help some people sort of plan what yarns they wanted to use and things like that, but knowing what type of project it is. So I will be doing that for the other patterns. So it will tell you the type of design that it is, and then again, just in the notes, I will say what yarn I used for that particular pattern. And I think pattern 2 might be my favourite.
I really like pattern 2, but I really, 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 really like pattern 3.
Pattern 3, yeah. And then also on the 28th, so on the next podcast, I'll be drawing for a winner for the first skein of yarn. Now, because it was the burrow wrap was the first one to come out, I thought it made sense for the first yarn to be the burrow. So that's this lovely sort of very mildly variegated, tonally gorgeousness, very autumnal. So I'll be drawing for a winner for this skein on the next podcast, and it will be drawn randomly from all the numbers from the beginning of the thread to that point.
The 25th of June.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And there's still a chance for you to get involved and, have a chance to win that. So 25th of June, make sure you've just posted something in that thread.
Yeah.
And who knows, it could be you.
It could be you.
Winning that.
Yes.
Oh, yes. And, of course, you'll find all the Swish and Flick information on the website and also in the Ravelry group.
Yes.
Cool.
Brilliant.
Of course, the Great Pyramid Cal and Run is still ongoing, so follow the links below in the show notes if you want to find out more about that and get involved. So please do come and get involved with that if you would like. Kay has some purchases.
I bought a couple of little things. Do you know I knit down the pair of socks, the Bergère de France, the ones that sort of a limey green colour? I showed them a couple of episodes back. You've worn those and worn them and really like the yarn, don't you? So I bought a couple more skeins to knit him another pair. And this is the Imprim Prune.
Cool.
Colourway, and I'm presuming it's based on an actual prune because it
looks like it
is. Yeah, and it's like greys with these shots of like a little red. So it's the Bergère de France Gumi 50. So I'll be knitting down another shorty pair of socks. And I did get a solid as well in the same yarn because I thought that might look nice. But do you know something I noticed, and this is also the case with opal solids, it always looks like a thinner yarn than the actual colour, and it's exactly the same. You can tell straight away because this skein is very full and bouncy, and can you see this one's like sort of flatter?
Yeah.
And when you look at the yarn, it just looks thinner, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I don't know that I'm going to use this for the heels.
Right.
I might use a different yarn because it doesn't look as substantial as this one. This just looks nice and plump. This one doesn't, and I have noticed that with, like I say, the opal ones, that the solids just looks like a thinner yarn. I don't know why that would be. It's very strange. But at the same time I bought that, I spotted this one, and I must admit I bought it because of the name, which is not really a reason to buy a yarn, but it's also very pretty. It's by Rico, and it's called Superba Soupy Doopy. I mean, really? Who could resist a yarn called Soupy Doopy? And it's this beautiful striped yarn. It's stripes up, you can see on the back there. And my colourway is colourway number 1. How exciting! I don't think I've ever had a colourway number 1 before. I just thought that would be lovely for some socks for Dan as well.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
Folks, that's it. Lots going on over the next 2 weeks. Look out for the release of Knitability issue 20 coming next week.
Right.
We've got a great interview with Bird Street UK. There's all sorts going on in issue 20, so don't miss that. There's a series running at the moment all about mitre square blankets. There's a very controversial review coming up very soon about a Knit Pro ball winder. Yes,
You
yes.
see my face.
The face tells you everything. Don't miss that. And yeah, loads going on. So, without further ado, we shall say goodbye and we'll see you in 2 weeks for more.
Bye everyone. See you soon.
Sitting and knitting, it's Dan and Kay the bakery bears. Enthusiasm's not quitting for Dan and Kay the bakery bears. They'll take you to fabulous places of which their favorites they'll share. You better buy a pattern and get yourself a bakery bear. You'll find yourself in a castle while watching the bakery bears. It never feels like a hassle to sit and watch the bakery bears. What's on your shelf or what's in your oven, or maybe a shawl you'll want to wear. So sit yourself right down